This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 99. And welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Jamie D.
I'm Peter Rios.
We are sexy bitches, yeah!
And welcome to the show.
This episode is sponsored by www.crazycomics.com. Crazy spelled C-R-A-Z-E-E. You can go to their website and you can check out previews and trailers, preview pages for Cosmic Wars, Russ 5377, and Forbidden. You can see little short clips of interviews with Sam Vera and crew. They constantly update a lot of the interviews that they do, such as they do one with Sequart.com. And they also have done one with us, Comic Geek Speak. And they have our logo. Looks really cool on their homepage down on the bottom there. Check it out. Like I said, preview pages, character designs, behind-the-scenes images, interviews. That website is just... It's not dial-up friendly, I will say that. As I tried to look through it, I'm like, oh boy. But if if you're high speed and you got all that, hoo-ha, you can just go right on there and check it out. You'll get lost on there for a while. Definitely check out their preview pages. They have upcoming links to, the cons that they're going to, and it's just I think he said they are web designers themselves, or in some capacity. So they have that thing packed to the gills. www.crazycomics.com. And check them out at New York Comic Con.
'Cause they are crazy.
Everybody should have high speed. Everybody.
Yeah, Peter.
Never go back.
It's just about the end of the month, and so you have just a little bit more time to read Aranya, Volume 1, Heart of the Spider, the digest. If you still want to get it, it's available from InStockTrades.com for 40% off. And we have 2 contests running in January that will be over at the end of the month, and so you can just barely get in under the wire there. For all those details, check out our website, because they are too numerous to mention. And so probably, like by episode 101, I would guess we'll probably be announcing the winners for all that.
Yeah.
So
Got to get cracking on looking at them.
yeah, and if you want us to, if you have opinions on Aranya, email them to us, because we'll be recording that next, I think. So it's very soon to get your information in.
Opinions, good, bad, and different. We want to hear the opinions.
Yep. And Infinite Crisis number 4. We'll
Yep.
be recording that shortly, too.
Mm-hmm. And so for our main topic today, we are going to talk to Chris Staros from Top Shelf Comics. And he's what's his official title? Co-publisher or something?
Yeah, in the interview that I have, it says co-publisher.
Yeah. So he's a big man in charge over there, and we welcome Chris to the show. Hello, Chris.
Hey, this is Chris.
All right, and you can hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, great. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
With me here is Shane, Jamie, and Peter.
Shane, Jamie, and Peter, and that's the squad.
That is the squad, yes.
How you doing, Chris?
Good, doing great, man.
So you are in charge of Top Shelf Publications, is that correct?
Yeah, Top Shelf Productions is run by both myself, Chris Staros, and also my partner, Brett Warnock. I live here in Marietta, Georgia, and Brett lives in Portland, Oregon. And we run the company from both of our houses, as well as a small warehouse here in Marietta.
So you're bi-coastal then?
That's right. We have East Coast and West Coast offices. That makes us sound really professional.
Very important. Hey, Chris, so before we get into your company and all that goodness, we have to ask you the question we always ask everyone, and that is, when did you first start reading comics?
Interesting enough, when I was a kid, I never read comic books. I was always... When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a rock star, and I picked up the electric guitar when I was 15 and played in bands my whole life. I was a heavy metal lead guitarist for years, which is another huge story. But a lot of my friends when I was growing up read comics, but I never really got into them. And when around 1990, when I was 28 years old, My wife had a job that got off an hour after the job I had. I was working the software business. She was working the hotel business. And I had an hour to kill every time before I picked her up from work because we worked so close we shared a ride. And every day I would drive by this comic book shop. And I'd see it every day, and I thought, I had an hour to kill. And rather than sit in her parking lot, I just decided to pull in one day and just hang out a little bit and browse. And, I was looking at all the Spider-Man and Iron Man and Batman comics and things, from the TV shows and cartoons I remember watching as a kid and was interested in them. But I remember asking the clerks there, what do you have for adults, something that was, more mature or whatever, anything cool going on. And they put a copy of Alan Moore's graphic novel V for Vendetta in my hands. And I took it home, I read it that night, and it absolutely blew me away. I really had no idea that the medium of comics had so much potential as an art form and what could be done with it. And the same thing popped into my head as when I was 12 years old and I heard my first Black Sabbath album, which was the phrase, I could do this, Yeah. And another obsession was born. And I just dove into comics and tried to really, get caught up on everything. And I really got into the undergrounds and the alternatives and Fantagraphics and the early D&Q stuff. And, just got involved that way. So that's how I kind of got my start in comics through Alan.
That's a good way to get started, huh?
Mm-hmm, yeah, it was all downhill from there. But hey, at least I had a good start.
Did you stick with just reading Alan Moore stuff first, or did you branch out to other things right away?
I branched out to other things right away. From a couple conversations in stores, I started to gather that where all the cool stuff was being done, at least from my point of view, from the stuff that I knew I would be interested in, it was in this stuff called the alternative press or the undergrounds. And so I started seeking out where those things were and started doing, that was really pre-internet at that time, so I was doing a lot of mail order and catalog buying and things of that nature to get caught up on stuff.
Cool.
And then from there, that led to the Star Report?
The Staros Report,
Staros
yes,
Report.
conceitedly named after myself, but that was more or less an effort to avoid brand confusion, just like, it's me, it's my opinion, this is called the Staros Report. Yeah, funny thing is when I started going to all these comic shops and looking for the really cool underground books I was hearing people talk about, most of the shops really were not carrying this stuff, and I realized later on that there was a minority of stores really carrying a full breadth of comics, and most of the shops were focusing on the mainstream stuff, the Marvel and DC stuff. I can't say that I blame them per se, but it just wasn't the stuff I was looking for at the time. And so every time I would find a book that I loved, like, Love and Rockets or 8-Ball or whatever, I would take notes on, where you could get it from, how much it cost, why I liked it, and all this kind of stuff. And as I started reading hundreds and literally thousands of underground books over the next 4 years, I started having this huge set of notes, about where all these cool books were coming from, why they were great, and how you could get them. And it occurred to me that, when you walked into a store and you asked somebody, what should you be reading next, usually they would say, The Sandman, and that was just a standard answer for what was the cool thing. Trust me, The Sandman is a fantastic book. I'm a huge fan of The Sandman, but I had already read it, so I was looking for something else, and I was already caught up with The Sandman, reading every issue. So I thought, well, you know what, maybe if I compiled all my notes into like a what you should be reading next kind of catalog, it might be of use to some people. And it turned out to be, I think, of use to some people. Maybe 10, but still, it was a fun exercise.
And when was this?
The first Star Wars Report came out in the summer of '94, after my 4 years of research in comics, and it was 6 sheets of paper stapled together that probably 35 people saw. So the first printing of that is very rare and extremely valuable.
I'll look for it on eBay.
There you go. Yes, I think you could find one in a quarter bin if they even existed. But the second one I did was a sort of a little white digest-sized thing called the Star Wars Report number 2, and it had a really clunky electronic plug on it with the catchy phrase, "Plug into the fanzine covering the most intelligent and innovative comics industry or something like that, you know. And that one, I printed I printed like a couple thousand. And at the time, Diamond turned me down for distribution on that, which honestly they were right to do. And so I was stuck with all these copies, and I thought, well, what the hell, let's try and get the word out on this thing. And I actually mailed out and gave away about 1,400 copies of that thing to help kind of drum up some correspondence, some letters, some feedback, and just some play on it, Sent them out to some of the cool shops that I knew were good around the country. And I also visited a couple big signings at the time, like Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean were doing a signing for Mr. Punch here in Atlanta. I remember once, and they had about 300 or 400 people that showed up for that, including me, who was there to get my book signed as well. And I just said, you know what, these are the kind of people that the book was designed for, people who knew the Sandman and who were looking for something else to read, just like me. So I gave 400 copies away that day to everybody in line. And the funny thing is, it's been 11 years, 12 years since that time, and I still run into people at cons that say, hey, man, I was one of those guys at this Neil Gaiman sign you gave one of those copies to. So that started out. And then the first official really published one that was comic book sized and had color covers and everything was Star Sport 96 and the Star Sport 97 that were carried through Diamond and solicited, and which helped get my feet wet on self-publishing and how to publish and how the convention circuits work and how distribution worked and so forth.
And that's when you, in 97, was it, for Top Shelf, you and Brett got together and the partnership began?
Yeah, around 94, 95. Both of us were just getting our start doing stuff. Brett had started doing a couple little minis because very few people know this, but Brett is a very good artist as well, even though he decided to, become an art director more than a cartoonist himself. He did a couple mini comics himself, and then he started this anthology called Top Shelf, where he drew the cover or back covers to some of them. And the name of the company at that time was called Primal Groove Press, with the feature book of that company called the anthology called Top Shelf. And he started producing some very cool and very hip anthologies under that Top Shelf name. He actually introduced himself to me first by writing a letter to me after reading the Star Wars Report 96. And it was the exact letter I had been looking for, which was somebody who was a hip cat who really understood all the hip stuff but had no attitude about it. Because I've always been a big fan of the independent stuff, but I never have been an independent snob. Like I'm not a guy who shuns Batman or Spider-Man because I'm such an indie elitist. No, I love the Americana of the superheroes. I love all of that stuff. So I can embrace it all. I don't have to be an elitist about it. And Brett was exactly that way, except he came from a very much hipper background than I did, who was doing really cool indie art, had incredible design sense and so forth. And so from that letter, we kind of developed a correspondence, even called each other a few times, and really got to be friends and realized we had the exact same taste in comics. And after being on the convention circuit a little bit, we, started hanging out together. And I think it was in September of 97 when he had just come out with Top Shelf number 5, which is the most beautiful book he had put out at that time. And he had sort of run out of steam at that point, run out of money and ideas of where to go with next. And I said, I've got some business background. I've got some editorial skills. You've got all the art direction skills in the world and design sense in the world. Why don't we team up? Why don't we take the company Top Shelf and turn it into a corporation, and the both of us together try and relaunch this thing? Actually, to back up one second, right before Top Shelf number 5 came out, Brett decided to change the name of the company to Top Shelf Productions. So he had done that before I even, joined up with him. Mm-hmm. So in 97, we became partners, and, we've been together 9 years now. Next year will be our 10th year anniversary as publishers.
Awesome. Any plans for the 10th year?
We are going to have a party somewhere, whether it be probably be at the Small Press Expo, since that's where we got started. We'll do something like that. Brad will probably be the key organizer of that, as he is the bartender, mixologist, Coolio, one of us. But, we'll probably do something cool like that.
That's awesome. let's talk about some of the trade dress and the cover designs and the package design of a lot of the top shelf books. The ones that we received, like Tricked and The King and AEIOU and Spiral Bound, and just a lot of the packaging itself is top quality. I mean, even at the stand when we saw you down in Baltimore, you're at Baltimore Comic-Con, right?
Sure, yeah.
I get confused which conventions we saw you at, but you have all those trades in front of you. The Comic Book Artist magazine. I mean, they're all just excellent quality stock, and it's just great.
Well, one of the first things you learn about being in any business, and I learned this when I was in the bands, when I was in the heavy metal bands in the 80s, to where I knew this as a teenager, which is that you are not in competition with the garage band next door to you. You are not in competition with the zinester or mini comics guy next door to you when you decide to jump into the entertainment world. You are in competition with Elvis, the Beatles, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and everybody else who's putting out DVDs, novels, or trade paperbacks, graphic novels out there. And when somebody out there decides to spend $15 on your graphic novel, at that exact moment in time, they have chosen your piece of entertainment over every Brad Pitt DVD, over every Beatles album, over every Elvis album, to buy your book that day. So you are competing with those people for everybody's entertainment dollar and entertainment interest. So when you're going to put something out there, it better look good, it better feel good, it better read well, it better rock. And Brett and I knew that was a focus that we had to take on to really try to compete on a national level, even if we were going to be small press and not necessarily move tons of copies of things. We knew that's the game we had to play.
Well, I will say one thing about that to go along with what you were saying about your product. Your stand is always one of the stands that always, and I'm going to use the word stand a whole lot, but always stands out to me whenever I've seen you at various conventions, and I always invariably stop and look just at what you have. Even if I've seen it a month ago and it's the same stuff, I will still stop and look, because you just present such a good, you just have such a good presentation at your stand. It makes you want to stop and look.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. Our stuff is colorful, it's poppy, but again, like I was mentioning earlier, it doesn't really have any attitude. It's not elitist. It's embracing. So people of all kind of comics fandom areas can come over and just be welcomed into the Top Shelf family. There's something here for everybody. If you skew more to the mainstream, you could try the Creature Check or the Surrogates. If you skew towards the really crazy stuff, you could try the Happy and some of our other titles. There's all kinds of, or if you want all ages stuff, Owly and Spiral Bound, there's all kinds of things there. And, and also we were talking earlier about the design sense of things. Brett is the art director of the company. And the one nice thing about us is that, I'm the editor of the stories inside of books and Brett's the editor of the art. But we don't necessarily force our stamp to be on every book. If somebody's a great designer, we'll let them run with it. Like Craig Thompson on his Blankets design and Goodbye Chunky Rice designs. That was all Craig. He might have shown us a few sketches earlier on, like say, do you like this one or do you like that one? And we would say, oh, we like this one better. But after that part, it was all Craig's execution. The same goes for Spiral Bound. I mean, Aaron Ranier's Spiral Bound, to me, has to be one of the coolest designed packages of all time in graphic novels. And it's one of the great graphic novels, too. And that was all Aaron, him designing that kind of spiral-bound notebook with the pencil down the spine and everything. That was his. But the key is that whether we design the book for cartoonists because they're weak on design skills or whether we let them do it, we tend to try and make sure that everything sort of falls together under this sort of top-shelf house style, which is kind of indefinable, but it represents the intersection of Brett's tastes and my tastes, and whatever that is, hopefully people can just sort of see it and go, hey, that's a top-shelf book.
I read one of your interviews with the online site Savant, and you have a paragraph in here that I wanted to bring out for our listeners and also for yourself, and then I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
I'll read it. It says, "The graphic novels we like to publish are all crafted with an eye for character and storytelling. characterized by a unique, engaging art style and complemented by a thought-provoking subtext full of social realism, humor, and heart. And that's really what we look for. Well, that and cartoonists who we really like personally. We really want to be a team here, and it's very important to both Brett and myself that we have a great time with all of our cartoonists on this odd and fantastic voyage that we're on. Would you say, when I read that, I was like, that's like a perfect mission statement almost. Would you say that that's still true today?
That is absolutely true. I mean, the one thing that characterizes our books is that they are unique and engaging, that all the cartoonists have a very unique style about them and you know, very crafty style about them, and that they're also, a lot of them, most of them, their stories are full of heart and subtext. The stuff that we do is generally pretty positive, not very nihilistic, very positive, and has a lot of heart. You know, things that will touch you and leave you thinking about them. People who read Blankets or people who read Owly, they think about those things. They become very intense fans of those things, and because it touches your heart, it moves you. And those are the things that we want to do. And that comment that I made about wanting to get along with the cartoonist is very real. I mean, you know, I gave up a very lucrative day job to publish comics full time, and, you know, we don't make a lot of money individually in this business, and we risk a lot all the time. Risk great deals of money and could lose everything at any point in time in this thing. Every month we're gambling with putting out books that maybe nobody buys, and we do that 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden we're like, you know, being at Vegas, you lose 10 hands in a row. Doesn't matter what your bankroll strategy is, you're out of money and you're going home. And so we work really hard to make this stuff right. So when I talked about wanting to get along with the cartoonist, you can have a day job or not like what you do. But Brett and I never wanted that to be the case in comics. We wanted to be able to always like what we do and always like the people we're working with, so that when we go to conventions and hang out with them, we're having beers, we're having dinner, and we're having a good time. So even though we work extremely hard at Top Shelf, we want to have a good time doing it. And so most of the cartoonists, all the cartoonists we work with, are easy to get along with, fun to work with, and that's sort of just a requirement that we have to publish things.
Do you have a submissions policy?
We do. It's on our website. If you go to the Top Shelf Comics, COMIX.com, and look under contacts, I think there's a little subsection called submission guidelines. But basically, it's really easy to submit to us. The only thing we ask is you don't email us JPEGs to our account, because people can really clog up our inboxes with gigantic files, and it happens all the time, and, you know, wish it wouldn't. But, you know, people can either email us a URL to their website so we can check out a story at their website, or they can just print a hard copy of their comics and mail them to either my P.O. Box here in Marietta or Brett's P.O. Box in Portland, and all that information's on our website. And the main thing is, you know, if you're going to submit to us, we'd like to see, you know, at least 10 or 20 completed pages of a comic story, so we get a nice sense of how you illustrate, how you lay out a page, how you pace a story, how you write a story, and all that stuff together. And if you're a writer and an artist separately, we kind of need you to come to us as a package together. Top Shelf really isn't in the business of hooking up writers and artists. It's very difficult for us to do, so it's best if a writer and artist kind of pair up on the convention scene and pitch a proposal to us together. But all in all, we look at lots of things, and we tend to get, even as small a company as we are, based on, I guess, our high visibility as a publishing company, we get on average of about 1,000 submissions a year right now.
That's quite a few.
Yeah, it is.
Now, of those 1,000, you know, how many are people who are way off the mark and they're sending you horror comics or, you know, completely 100% mainstream superhero books with large busted, you know, scantily clad women and things like that just don't fit the Top Shelf?
Honestly, I guess the majority of them are kind of off the mark. And that, you know, there's 2 or 3 ways somebody goes about getting published. One is sort of a scattershot kind of thing, where you go find the list of all the publishers, you have your submission, you just send it to everybody, kind of spaghetti style, and just see what sticks, you know. And then there's other people who are just a little bit more targeted, who do a little more research and go, you know what, really only Fantagraphics, Ron Corley, and Top Shelf would be into my work. and I'm going to concentrate on those three guys. I'm going to do a little research on those three guys and find out who runs the companies, what kind of stuff they do. I'm going to craft a cover letter, and I'm going to address it to Chris, and I'm going to spell his name correctly. I'm going to drop a few little, words of praise in there, even if I don't even feel that way, but say, gosh, I really love that book you did, and blah, blah, blah. And I think my books will fit into your line, and here it is. And, the more the person invests in the submission to us, the more you can tell they care about your line, the more time you're going to take in responding. And even if it's something you ultimately reject, it's very likely that the more personalized that submission is, the more time I'm going to take to critique it and make recommendations of what they could do better on their next project and those kinds of things. Honestly, most of the stuff that we publish tends to be from people that have been out on the circuit self-publishing things and mini comics or whatever and working the conventions themselves, because part of the whole concept of getting published is, I kind of like to say, not polishing the same turd all the time. In other words, if you've got this one great story you want to tell, and you send it out and you get rejected, and then you send it out again and then you retool it and you send it out again and get rejected, it's not really the best way to get published, because most people have to put several stories under their belt before they internalize all the things that are needed to tell a great story. Like that shopping list of things you mentioned in that paragraph I wrote earlier, all those things are things you need to internalize as an artist. Great writing, great art, great pacing, subtext, heart, humor, social realism, all these things have to flow at the same time, and it's very difficult to do that on your first story. So people who are out on the circuit did a mini comic. People praised it, or some of their friends told them it wasn't very good, and then they did another one. They had the courage and the confidence to get that first mini comic out there, but the humility to know that the next thing they were going to do was going to be a lot better, and they did it. And after a year or two of doing these minis or a little self-publishing and being out on the circuit, when they looked behind them, they realized they had gotten a lot better and were very embarrassed by their first works. But if they had never gotten those first works out there, they'd have never gotten to the point where they are. And at that point is when generally the publishers start noticing people and going, well, I've known that guy on the circuit for a couple of years. We've had beers. We're friendly. And now he's really getting to the point where he could move up a notch, come join the publishing company. And that's generally when we say, what are you working on next? Would you like to do that with us? And that's how that works. We have signed a few blind submissions in our P.O. box and done some great books that way. We discovered Matt Kent and Jason Hall with the Pistol Whip series that way, and, they've been with us all these years. We love their work.
Your presence at conventions really shows that, you guys are really putting yourselves out there. Have you found yourself? Have you been picked up by more retailers? I know you have a very strong book market presence, but what about retailers? Do you find yourself getting into more local comic shops as well?
Yeah, I mean, the ones, they don't call it the small press for nothing. So you realize in the small press that you're going to earn every single fan one at a time and every single retailer one at a time, and that's why Top Shelf goes to more conventions than every other publisher. These last 4 or 5 years, we've done 20 to 21 shows a year, which kind of means we're on the road 20 to 21 weeks a year, And because we carry so many books with us, we tend to have to drive to all these shows. So we're driving a lot between, April and October. That's when the heavy season is. So it's kind of like March of the Penguins. If you've seen that movie, we feel like we're carrying these eggs around for 6 months of the year. But
Are you going to New York?
I'll be in New York, yes.
Oh, great. Well, we'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely. But what you asked about with the retailer thing, when we are at all these conventions, we have a chance to meet all the local retailers in these areas, and we've established very strong relationships with several hundred retailers around the country. I would say in the diamond accounts, which number somewhere around the 2,000 range, maybe 3,000. I'm not sure, somewhere in there. I would say that the stores that are really open to indie books and carry a full spectrum of stuff in addition to the mainstream stuff are probably around 300 to 400 of those stores. So somewhere between 15 and 25% of the retailers out there really carry the kinds of stuff that we do. So that's the kind of penetration we have into the comics market. So it's not tremendous. It's not like every single store has a copy of Tricked on their shelves or whatever. It's just not the case. But we're working on it. And every time I meet a new retailer, I'm going to establish that relationship with them. I'm going to let them know we stand behind our books, and if they don't sell, we'll take returns from them and swap them out for some of our new books and let them know they can trust us. And, you know, when you have books like From Hell and Blankets and Owly under your repertoire, and these retailers learn that those books sell and sell very well and are highly praised by their fan base, it gets easier to start to penetrate these new stores.
That's excellent. I can attest. I walked into a Walden Books and saw Tricked on the shelf, and I got all excited.
Yeah, and that's something that's new. You know, like since around 2000, when the book trade really picked up on comics, because you know, I guess around 1986, back when Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and Mouse came out, there was a huge amount of hype in the mainstream world about comics. And the book trade kind of tried to pick up on the graphic novel thing, but really there wasn't enough product out there to make that wave move forward. It was mostly just, you know, Spider-Man collections that could be pushed because there wasn't that huge literary base of graphic novels there. But in 2000, once, you know, Entertainment Weekly and Time and People and the libraries and the Hollywood people got into comics and started making a bunch of movies and press was going everywhere, all of the independent publishers had an enormous amount of material out there, including the manga publishers and including, you know, DC Comics' Vertigo line with their Sandman trade and all their other trades that they had. You know, they had a tremendous line of product as well, and that really helped fuel this wave of interest in the book trade. I mean, I remember going to the Book Expo America in 2000 and having to explain to every single person I met there what a graphic novel was, because it's kind of a misnomer anyway, and it's difficult to explain, but I just spent my whole week there just explaining the concept. But now you go to the Book Expo America, every single person there knows what a graphic novel is, knows it's one of the biggest growth categories in the book trade, and basically you're there to meet with all the buyers of Virgin, Tower, Borders, Barnes & Noble, and all these chains to let them know what your line is like over the year and to see what kind of books they want to pull in. The difference being is that the comics retailers, as the backbone of our industry, are more likely to stock a full line of your books. And they take a bigger risk doing so because they buy books non-returnable from Diamond, even though we'll take returns directly from retailers to back them up in this thing. While the book trade tends to go deep on just a few titles, they would cherry pick within a year, where they would go, oh, Craig Thompson has a new book out, we're going to take a lot of those, you know? Mm-hmm. And then some of your guys that you're just breaking, maybe we'll wait on those and see how popular they get. Mm-hmm. While the comics retailers tend to take more chances on our entire line.
After we talked about you last time, and we went to Baltimore, I stopped by your stand and I picked up Less Than Heroes, the 2 Alley trades, and then a little bit after that, I ended up getting all the comic book artists. I got my own copy of Tricked. I bought Box Office Poison and the second one. Uh-huh. So I've really grown to enjoy and love all the books that you put out, and I'm looking very forward to picking up things in the future. And I do know that the third volume of Alley just came out, and I'm waiting to get that for my kids.
Very good. Well, thank you for picking up those books. One of the things that people don't realize is that how important the comics fan is, because the fan votes with their pocketbook every time they pick up a book, and the small press literally lives and dies by the handfuls of books we sell at conventions and in stores. I mean, the the difference between 2 or 3 good conventions in a year and 2 or 3 bad conventions in a year is whether we pay our printing bills or not. And Brett and I, both to run Top Shelf because it was growing, had to quit our jobs 6 years ago, to run Top Shelf. But that means the whole operation lives or dies by the sale of books. So, every time we see somebody who really gets behind our stuff and sticks with the line and likes to pick up a handfuls of things every year, it really makes a difference to just keeping us there.
Well,
so thank you.
These are things that I would have never picked up in the past, and just as a result of, we always talk on the show about broadening everyone's horizons, trying new things, and as a result of that, I myself have tried so many new things that once I kind of latch onto a company, I go crazy because it's such a new area to explore, and I've really had a good time exploring your world.
But, that's funny you mentioned that, because one of the most exciting things is sometimes discovering, like you said, discovering something and be able to go back into it, go back in time and pull some stuff. Like when I find out that somebody discovers Love and Rockets, for example, now I'm almost jealous because I remember discovering it and being able to go back and, buy like all 50 issues and read them back to back and just drown yourself in them and just love it. And so it is kind of cool when you discover, like the Owly series from the Free Comic Day book, and then go back and buy the 3 trades and are able to immerse yourself in it for a little bit and really get caught up and really become a fan of the thing. And speaking of Owly, last year we did a Free Comic Book Day book called Splashing Around, which is extremely popular with the retailers. And this year in May, I think May 7th is Free Comic Book Day, we're doing another Owly book called Breaking the Ice. And so, for example, if people are out there curious about Owly but haven't quite decided to break down and spend the money on the trades yet, either the current Free Comic Book Day book, which you can get from our website, or the new Free Comic Book Day book in May, be sure to tell your retailer you want those in the store, and you'll get them for free and be able to check out the series that way.
That's excellent.
So why don't we go into some of the stuff that's coming out in 2006 for Top Shelf?
Well, we've got a lot of cool things coming out in 2006 with the we love all our children equally, so to speak, but, obviously the big release of 2006 will be Alan Moore and Melinda Gebbie's epic Lost Girls, which has been in development almost 20 years now and is an absolute masterpiece and will be a phenomenal release. Are y'all familiar with Lost Girls at all, or is it something that you really don't know much about?
I'm definitely familiar with it. I think I picked up the first. They've done like half of a graphic novel, or they've done like 1 or 2 issues of it.
Originally, I don't know if y'all remember, Steve Bissett with his company Spider Baby Graphics did a horror anthology called Taboo in the early 90s, and very cool anthology. If you can find old back issues of it out there, I'd pick them up. Very cool book. And Taboo actually was the place where From Hell first saw print. It was first serialized in Taboo. These were perfect bound, like graphic novel-like anthologies. And it was also where Lost Girls got its debut as a serialized comic book. And then after that, Kitchen Sink Press published the first 2 issues of Lost Girls 1 and 2. I think that was around 95. And that was the first 56 pages of the story. When I guess it was about 5 years ago, when Alan Moore left DC Comics the first time to branch out on his own, and he formed Mad Love Publishing, he started working on 3 major projects. One was From Hell, one was Lost Girls, and one was Big Numbers. And all 3 are just, masterpieces beyond masterpieces. And, after we had published From Hell with the Eddie Campbell comics, and we brought From Hell back into print, it occurred to me that Lost Girls had been sitting in limbo for a long time and really needed to get completed. So when I was in England, I arranged to visit with Alan and Melinda and talk to them about the series. And it ends up, all these years that were going by quietly in the background, they were still tinkering with it and working it. And Melinda had gone a long way to finishing a lot more of it. So Brett and I made him an offer to publish the book, which they were very excited about, working with us on that. And, of course, obviously we were excited about working with them on that. And the funniest thing is I always wanted an Alan Moore autograph. I mean, he's why I got into the business. I've been a huge fan of his forever. I had to remember I was the publisher that day and not the fanboy, to be professional, And I never realized, I always wanted an Alan Moore autograph, but I never realized that my first Alan Moore autograph would be on the contract to publish Law School, which is an irony, and a great moment in my personal top shelf history. But we ended up paying Melinda to finish the book, and, it took her a couple more years to do that. But it's, the first 56 pages were published by Kishnik Press, but the epic is 240 pages of fully painted art, and it is all completed now. Todd Klein has done all the lettering, and we've, with all the design embellishments we've done on the book, it's going to be 3 cloth-bound hardcovers with dust jackets and lots of extra little pages and design motifs, and the whole thing is going to be, each volume is going to be 112 pages, so 336 pages and 3 hardcover volumes in a slipcase, shrink-wrapped, and it'll be out this summer. So, so only people who have read the comics have only read the first, like 20% of the story. So there's a ton more to see, and it's going to be controversial, and it's going to be make a lot of impact. It's quite a book.
And that's he gathers like a lot of the female fairy tale type characters, am I correct?
Yeah, well, you know how with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, how he played with, characters from fiction and put new spins on them and kind of transformed them into other things. And this is the case where he takes characters from Wonderland, Oz, and Neverland and has 3 grown women meeting in a hotel and really exploring each other and themselves in sexual situations where they really, get to analyze their own story. So, for example, the stories from Oz have sexual overtones and undertones, and he really explores that. In a sense, it's something that's never been done before, which is to see if pornography and erotica can be art and have literary merit, and can men and women both enjoy these explicit images at the same time. It's a very, ambitious question that they're taking on, but it's quite amazing. It's their way of reinventing pornography as something thoughtful and human and quite exquisite. And really, it's something like this has never been done before in literature.
Cool. I know that's, like you said, it's been on the back burner for a while, so it's great that that's finally going to, be able to be put out there.
Right.
That's awesome.
These things take some time, but so, we'll have From Hell out there, and we'll have Law Schools out there, and, both books we can be very proud of.
And what else? What else do you have on?
Well, another one of the big things this year is the continuation of the Owly graphic novel line. The 3rd trade just came out. The 4th one will be out before the end of the year, and also the new Free Comic Day book will be out. But one of the things we're branching out into this year with Owly is our Top Shelf this summer, or maybe late summer, we'll be producing our very first toy ever, the Owly plush toy. Andy and his mother about a year ago put together a little prototype of a little stuffed Owly, and Andy's been taking it around to conventions, as sort of like the table mascot, with the idea in mind that maybe one day we'd make these toys. If I had them this last year, I think we would have sold hundreds and hundreds of them, because everybody wants to squeeze this little guy and take him home. And so we've decided, it's time to make these toys. So in addition to the Owly T-shirts that have become very popular this last year, we're manufacturing a few thousand of these plush toys in China right now, and hopefully we'll have them solicited in the Diamond Previews catalog and available through shops and at conventions here by summertime. So that's another big thing. We're really trying to keep Owly in the forefront of things this year. And then, of course, some of our main guys are still doing lots of things. The Jeffrey Brown line of books, he's got in April a book called Every Girl is the End of the World for Me, and which is a classic title. If you've read Clumsy or Unlikely or AEIOU or some of this funnier stuff like Mini Sulk, or you get a sense of how great Jeffrey is at really analyzing relationships and really taking autobiographical comics to another level. And this book, Every Girl's in the World for Me, is another great example of that. He's also working on an expanded edition of I Am Going to Be Small, which is a little tiny thing he self-published with a bunch of one-off, one-page humorous strips. And we're going to be publishing an expanded collection of those sometimes later in the year. And I don't know if we'll have it out for this year, but it'll be coming soon. He's working on another graphic novel called Incredible Change Bots, which is his kind of robots fighting graphic novel, which done in his style I think will be pretty cool. So Jeffrey Brown stuff. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, James Kachalka's series Super Fuckers. Can I say that on TV?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. His series Super Fuckers, issues 1 and 2 are out now, and we'll be publishing issue 3 in June and maybe 4 by Christmas. And if you haven't checked out that series yet, it is very irreverent and just lots of fun. I think it crosses over well with superhero fans and also indie fans because it just works in both camps. And that's one of the few series that we actually do in full color, so that's cool. And with James, we're also doing the next volume of American Elf, which will collect 2 years of his diary strips that you can see on AmericanElf.com. And right now the plan is to do that book in full color this time, so that'll be out for this summer. So those are some other cool things we've got going on. Let's see what else we got. Renee French has a really beautiful hardcover coming out in April called The Ticking, which is very disturbing and very insightful. And we're lucky, very lucky, to have Jordan Crane be the designer of that book. And he's taken that book from head to toe and designed everything, and it's going to be a hardcover, and it's coming out this spring. So that's another cool release as well.
I believe a couple months ago, Top Shelf had a sale on their website, and I think, Shane, you that's where you picked up a lot of the comic book artists and things. Yeah.
Yep.
Are there plans for any other kind of sales like that? I know some of our listeners on the forum, they also picked up on that, and they went out and purchased some things as well.
Yeah, I mean, we do, we'll do a sale or two every year based on things. Generally, honestly, we generally do sales when there's a time in that year when we really need some money, I mean, generally why you do a sale. And oftentimes it's like in the spring when we're trying to gear up for the summer, when we have huge printing bills looming ahead of us and we need to find some down payments for the printers to get our summer books going. Or oftentimes it's in the fall when we've given the printers all the money that we've made at all the conventions, all the money we've made through all the distributors and retailers, and we find ourselves still woefully short to paying them off. And we decide, you know what, it's time for a sale. Let's raise some money. Let's pay off everything we've done this year so we can start working on next year. So, yeah, there'll probably be a couple more sales this year. And just so you know, when you see a sale, that's the time when you go, hey, Top Shelf could use a few bucks to pay off things so they can continue being Top Shelf. Let's get some books,
Well, and I got an email from you guys stating that fact, and that's exactly why I did it then. I was going to pick up the comic book artist at some point, but when that came across, I thought, well, now's the time to do it.
I did the same. I got all 5 issues.
Yeah. And John Cook, who is the mastermind behind Comic Book Artist, and, Top Shelf is really the funnel for that, but John really is responsible for everything. And also Bissell and Titus, who are the designers of CBA, who do such a beautiful job on the cover designs and, made that book so, posh looking this last few years. They just do a great job on CBA. And I know people wish it would come out more often, but John put so much work into those things, it just takes a long time. I don't know if y'all saw that double issue, Eisner issue he put out recently. But
I have that on my shelf. I remember seeing you
yet.
at the convention and saying, hey, is that coming out soon?
Yeah.
and finally got it, and it looks great.
Yeah, finally it came out. But it is a beautiful issue. John does a great job with that, but he puts so much work into those things, they just take a lot longer than he expects normally. But yeah, there will be future issues of CBA. I'm not exactly sure what John has planned for number 7, otherwise I tell you who the cover feature is yet, but it's in work, and we'll solicit it sooner or later.
You're talking about like publishing and printing and all that. What's Top Shelf's policy on keeping like your graphic novels in print? I mean, is it one of those where if it sells out, you go back to print, or what?
Well, Brett and I, in general, like to keep most everything we do in print, and we tend to overprint enough on books to keep most of the line in print. Sometimes, when things get really popular, they sell out very fast and have to be reprinted. And sometimes things are selling at a good clip and sell out and have to be reprinted, but are not selling so fast that it's easy to pay for a reprint. In 2005, for example, this was a really tough year for us in reprints because this last year, 15 of our key books all went out of print at the same time. From Hell, Blankets, Carnet de Voyage, Trick, Box Office Poison, Monkey vs. Robot, Creature Tech, and there's more. I just can't remember them all. But, Clumsy, Unlikely, Same Difference. All these books went out of print right about the same time. Now, the problem with reprinting is that, you need to reprint a few thousand of them so you get the decent per unit price to make it all work, But when you reprint a book, you don't have that huge, I say huge in parentheses, initial order to help sort of cover the printing costs, And so you're paying $10,000 for a print run, and you maybe have orders for 500 of them on hand, $500 worth. So you're $9,500 in the hole on a reprint. And if you have to reprint 15 books in one season, you might actually initially be in the hole $150,000 to get those back in print, and then they would earn themselves back up because those are your perennials that still sell steadily over time. So it's difficult to keep books back in print. And generally what we've done over time is say, okay, if a book goes out of print, let it stay out of print for 2 or 3 months, and let retailers who need it start putting orders in the system. And when they pile up to a certain level where we know we can at least pay a percentage of that printing bill, we'll turn the printer on and say, run it. And then when it hits Diamond, those back orders will kick in. We'll get a check, and we'll be able to pay off some of the printing bill. So, that's what we'll do.
That's good to know. I just wanted people to know out there if they heard about your stuff and that they knew that you as a company had a policy that you wanted to keep all of your stuff in print rather than allowing some of it to go out.
Right, but some things do go out for a few months at a time, so if you see something you like, get it while you see it, because if it goes out of print, you may not be able to find it immediately when you're looking for it, because we have to juggle those things. The irony of the small press is that when you do books that are designed well and they're printed on nice paper and maybe have French flaps or just these extra design elements that make things look nice, they cost a lot to do. And when you print a lot of them, to last a year or so or two or whatever your model is on a particular title or artist, it costs a lot to do. And even the initial orders that come in from Diamond when you solicit and from the other distributors when you solicit the first time generally aren't enough to cover that print run, which means that in essence you kind of lose money on every single book you publish and then use your back catalog, your whole catalog of inventory, because, I guess in the 9 years that we've been together, Brett and I have published a little over 150 graphic novels and comics, so all those are sitting in the warehouse, and every week a few of this are selling and a few of that are selling, and you've got this kind of snowball churning behind you. So when you run a shortfall on your front list, you got your back list to hopefully fill in that hole, and then that new title becomes a part of the back list, helping to fill in the holes of the next titles, Ideally, in a perfect world, you'd sell enough copies when you initially offer a book to make money on that, and then make money again on the back end while it's still in business. But again, they don't call it the small press for nothing. You're working with smaller numbers, and you're trying to keep everything afloat and make everything work with the numbers that you have.
Well, I certainly appreciate offerings like, I think it was Tricked and Box Office Poison, at least this last time I ordered, had not only a soft cover but a hardcover version. Because I personally like hardcovers more. But at that time, I had to get the soft covers, and then at some point, I'll go back and get the hard covers. But it seems like you reprint and keep things in stock to kind of please everybody, and that's very, very impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, for those people listening out there, and Chris as well, in our episode 63, we actually did a review of the very generous box of copies that you sent. You know, The King, Tricked, some surrogate comics, AEIOU, Spiral Bound, and you know, you certainly have fans in this room that are constantly looking for your work.
Well, thank you. And you know, and you're mentioning a couple of those titles. One in particular, The Surrogates, is if some of your listeners out there are making that kind of slow jump from the mainstream books that they read over to the top shelf, one of the books they really ought to try is The Surrogates. It's a book that works extremely well in the mainstream world, but it's also very top shelf in the sense that the story has a lot of subtext. It's a very engaging story, and it meets all those requirements of storytelling we talked about earlier that really defines a top shelf book. It's a sci-fi tale that is quite remarkable, and it's kind of a cool story how that series came about. I don't know if y'all remember back in 2002 when Top Shelf sort of sent out its desperation email when our book trade distributor went under, and we got stiffed for a lot of money, and we kind of almost got really kind of put out of business that day because all our revenue from the From Hell movie vanished, and we still had the print bills out there, and there was no money coming in, and it was just a real disaster. And in April, one day we sent out an email saying, "Hey guys, hey gang, this is the situation. We're in a lot of trouble right now. If now is the time to buy books. If anybody wanted to buy some, here's what we have available." And that email just sort of ricocheted around the industry in an unprecedented fashion. It was truly the potential of the internet realized that day within the comics industry, and I was ever so grateful to the industry and the fans out there for coming to our aid. And by the end of that day, 1,000 web orders had hit our site. And I'm estimating about 200,000 people saw that message from everybody forwarding it to everybody they knew. And by that evening, all the money we had lost had come in that day on the site. And Robert Venditti, who I had met at a couple of the local summer conventions like MegaCon and the AtlantaCon and so forth, was an aspiring writer. And we had just briefly talked at a few shows. And he lived here locally in Atlanta, and he called me up out of the blue and said, "Chris, you may not remember, but we had met at a couple of shows." And I put his face to his name, and I remembered him. And he said, "I just saw your second email that you sent out that night saying that the orders had come in. Thank you, everybody. The company's back in business, and now we're going to get to the business of filling orders." He says, "I know you work alone here at Marietta. You're going to need some help. I'll come over tomorrow morning and help you pack boxes."
Wow.
And so he came over, and he was so helpful and so organized and so useful. I said, "Okay, first of all, you're not volunteering. I'm paying you, and I know you work full-time, but can you start working for me 2 to 3 days a week?" And so he became the first employee at Top Shelf from that. And honestly, nobody necessarily wants to pack boxes their whole life, even though I've been doing it my whole life with Top Shelf, and now Rob has too, because that's just a part of our daily lives. But he was an aspiring writer who wanted to write some scripts and wanted to break into comics, but he knew how hard it was to break into comics as a writer, and knew that I locally had a lot of connections in comics and could help him open some doors in that vein. And he started showing me a bunch of his script ideas, things he wanted to do. Some of them I liked, some of them I rejected, and sort of that thing. But he brought me this idea for the series called The Surrogates. And I said, "No, that's a good story. That's the story you ought to finish and tell." And so he set out to write the rest of that script and wrote a 5-issue script, which is a very remarkable script. My initial plan was, because he had some aspirations of being a mainstream writer, was to take that series and call my friends at DC Comics and Marvel and Dark Horse and open some doors for him and say, "Look, when this script's ready, after I've read it and helped him edit it, I'd say, okay, you guys, you ought to take a look at the script. It's really good." But after Brett and I had a chance to look at the script once it came in, we realized this script was so good and so cool and such a great idea for a story. It's like, we didn't want to let it go. We decided, let's just do it ourselves. And so, keep it in the family. Rob's family, let's keep it in the family. So I had met a cartoonist at the Savannah College of Art and Design, Brett Welderly, who was a student there years ago and who had a great portfolio that would work for this kind of stuff. And he had since gone on to do other stuff for DC and Oni and others and was busy. But I called him up and said, hey, can you squeeze this in? And he said, sure. And he started working on it a few months later. And then the design firm that's been handling the comic book artist magazines we hired to help us with the cover designs and the fake ads that we designed for the book and the fake brochures that we've designed for the book. And I don't know if you all have seen the Surrogates, but it is a very amazingly designed package, and Bissell and Titus did a great job. So we decided to make this the just like most awesome sci-fi series we could ever think of, and I think it holds water, if not, it's not better than a lot of the stuff that the big boys are doing out there. It's a 5-issue miniseries. The first 4 are out in stores now, or 4 is hitting next Wednesday, and then 5 will be out in the early March time frame. And I recommend that a lot of your listeners go out and check that series out. It's really cool.
Yeah, that was actually, you did throw a copy in that box, so we did actually get a chance to look at that. And from our listeners, I mean, granted, yes, most of us are mainstream readers and some of the listeners, but we have a strong group of listeners that constantly are pushing a lot of independent titles, not only Top Shelf, but they really support smaller press books. So you have some fans out there.
Well, that's great, and because ultimately it boils down to there are lots of great work being done by all the companies. In hindsight, when time is cruel to all the publishers and all the creators, because when you look back in time and you try to remember the great things that they did, just a few things stick out in your head. But everybody's got some of those things. Everybody's got those touchstone books that are really great out there. So it's not really about what camp you're from. It's really about just exploring all the camps and finding the good stuff that's out there, because there's good stuff everywhere.
Definitely. Well, we certainly look forward to keeping in touch with you, and I know, in an email exchange, we're going to try to hook up with some of these creators from Top Shelf. I'd love to have them on the show and get them some exposure.
Anytime, guys. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all and your listeners as well. And the questions were always good. Hey, the dogs only bark when you're on the phone.
That's right. Sorry about that. And we also look forward to seeing you at conventions, and we'll hook up and that we'll get another interview with you out in New York.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I'll be in New York with Aaron Renier of Spiralbound, Alex Robinson of Trick, and Liz Prince of Will You Still Love Me If I Wet the Bed, and Robert Venditti of the Surrogates and Andy Runton of Valley will be at MegaCon that very same weekend in Orlando, Florida. So
cool.
We'll have the bases covered that weekend.
That's great.
Cool. That's great.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Cool.
All right. Well, have a good night, and thank you again for stopping in.
Okay, man. Talk to you all soon.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Boy, he was cool.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun to talk to.
It was great that he wanted to come on and he wanted to give a push and talk about stuff that is coming out, and then like we just said, we're going to try to get some of the other guys in there from Top Shelf, some of the creators, and talk to him.
And he's right. He is at every show.
Yeah.
Every show I go to, he's there, talking all this stuff, talking to people, very personable. So, if you catch him at a show, go up and say, hey, you heard him on Comic Geek speak, and you're checking out his stuff, and I'm sure he'll appreciate it. He'll talk to you. And, you'll have a good time.
One of the nicest men, man. He was great to talk to.
And Jamie, you were right. Their booth is very eye-catching, and I guess a lot of that is just because every book that they publish is so eye-catching. I mean, it may seem trivial that the cover feels nice or looks nice or whatever, but there's something when you see 30, 40, 50 books all in a row that all just look so nice, that catches your attention, and you want to buy them.
And especially when I see it from small press.
Exactly.
I mean, that more than anything draws my attention.
Marvel
right there.
DC trades don't look anything like these trades.
And when I say it's eye-catching, I'm talking about not eye-catching at a small convention. I'm talking, I was in San Diego.
Yeah.
And you walk by and it was like, boom, you stopped.
Right.
and you looked at it, and it's just a great stand and a great product. Definitely, please go out there and support this product.
And when we were down in Baltimore, I saw that little alley plush he's talking about, and I wish they would have been for sale. He'd have gotten 2 sales, one from each of my boys with that.
He said they're coming out, so you'll
Yeah.
probably
I'll
pick
be
some
getting
up.
2 of them. That was one of the coolest little things I ever saw.
So we're going to switch gears now. And these questions have nothing to do with small press. This is Stump the Rio sent in from John Mayo.
John Mayo.
And it's a Star Trek themed Stump the Rios.
I'm dead.
I should be on this one.
Well, let's see here. He's got DC, Marvel, and Indie.
Well, because they were in all three.
That's
they've done
right.
All 3
Oh,
comics.
jeez.
Question number 1.
He found a loophole if I ever heard it.
Yeah. Question number 1. DC. Who was on the cover of Star Trek number 1 published by DC in 1984?
And that's a George Perez cover, too. Those first 3 were George Perez. It's got to be Kirk, Spock, Bones.
That would be McCoy.
Yeah, because I don't know.
McCoy, sorry.
Is-
Scotty, and I'll even throw Savick in there. Like, wasn't that around Star Trek 2 and 3?
It was around Star Trek 2, yeah. That
How's
came out
that?
in 82, 83.
Chekhov, McCoy, Kirk, Scotty, Uhura, Savick, and Sulu. No
Oh,
Spock.
I should have said all of them.
If you
then.
looked over here, I was giving you a little circle.
Yeah, but there was no Spock.
Go, go.
Oh, no Spock. Oh,
Yeah.
Because Spock was dead, if you remember that Star Trek 2.
Star Trek 2.
I should have thought that one through more.
Question number 2, Marvel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I may have ruined Star Trek 2 for somebody out there. Sorry.
No one watches that, so it doesn't.
Shut up.
Question 2, Marvel. Who was on the cover of Star Trek number 1 published by Marvel in 1980?
All right. That was before Star Trek 2, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go. Kirk. Kirk. Do I want to say Decker, or was he already out? He was already out with the V'ger thing by then. No, I'll say Decker. Why not? Kirk, Decker, Aaliyah, Uhura, Sulu, and Chekhov.
Spock, Kirk, Aaliyah, Decker, and a token red shirt.
I knew Decker and Aaliyah were on it.
Yeah.
Question number 3, Independent. Who's on the cover of Star Trek number 1 published by Gold Key in 1967?
Oh, wow.
They just came out in trade, too.
Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and that's it.
Spock, Kirk, and Sulu.
Shit.
I knew there were 3. I thought you were right with that one.
Damn it.
I think we all
You
need
got
to chip in for
stumped
that
it.
one.
I did. Oh, look, and there's the cover right there.
Sulu. Balloon knot.
Oh, my.
Do the Sulu dance.
I'm a comic fan, not a Star Trek fan, Jim.
So, you failed.
I failed,
You
John.
were
Wow.
stumped. Complete 100%
Damn.
stumped.
That was a whitewash.
The loophole.
That was a bug against the windshield there, baby.
All right, John. So, send us your snail mail. I don't know what you're going to get. We'll talk about it.
We'll send you a long box.
Yeah. We'll send you an organizer.
I'll see if I can find something Star Trek-y at home.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I got tons of good stuff.
Yeah, we'll check it out.
Jamie, we have a correction from the Valiant episode.
Okay.
Rye did not start over. Rye and the Future Force just became the next issue of Rye.
Oh,
it just
okay.
changed names and never
swore that
restarted.
was number 1.
Nope.
Oh, I could have answered that. I wish I would have been here for that.
Well, I thought it, but you were so adamant about it. It's like, and don't question the shiznit, you know?
Well, it was one of those. It was at the time where number 1 issues were so big and everything was new number 1 issue, and I just thought it was a number 1 issue.
I kind of wish somebody would pick up those Valiants and trade them in a cohesive manner so I could reread
Hey,
a lot of what I don't have.
Golden Eagle had like 6 Valiant trades there, I noticed.
Really?
They had Harbinger, they had Exo, I can't remember what else they had. They had 3 of the 4 Unity trades. They're missing number 1, but they had 2, 3, and 4 of Unity trades. So if anyone in the audience wants some of these trades, because I know there was a thread in the forum a while ago about somebody looking for Valiant trades.
Sure was.
They were sitting there, and I think they were still cover price, or even a little less than cover price. They might have been marked down a few dollars. I'm not sure, but
yeah, they wouldn't mark those up. It was graphic novels. They stay the same price.
Psst, where were they at?
in the back on the wall, close to the video games.
Thanks.
But if anybody wants them, just let us know. We could figure out and PayPal some money. We'll send them to you or something, whatever, if you're really looking for them.
That's cool.
What do we want to do now?
You got some voicemails?
I can download a few voicemails.
Okay.
You should...
Anybody read anything? Anybody got an off the rack?
No. No.
I got a rant I can go on if you want me to go on.
Oh, here we go.
Go on a rant.
Go
on a rant.
Shiznit rant.
Bow.
Okay, I'm a big fan of the handbooks, the Marvel handbooks.
This is a good
now,
rant.
I'm not a big fan of the ones that Marvel was putting out, the little team books and those kind of things, because I want a handbook. I want a comprehensive handbook, A to Z. Yeah, in a perfect world, I could get an encyclopedia of A to Z and then yearbooks each year. We've talked about that on numerous occasions. I was very excited when I saw Marvel was putting out their handbook again. Great. A comprehensive book. It even says the most comprehensive book out there on the back of the damn comic.
Well, it's titled A to Z, right?
Yeah, so the first book is coming out. I'm at Golden Eagle. They have it on their preview copies sitting there. So on Wednesday when I went to pick up my books, I thought, I'm going to go over and look at it. Went over and looked at it. I picked it up. Opened it up. Started paging through it. Got to the Avengers. Found Avengers MC2.
Which is deathly important.
Avengers MC2. Okay. Licked my finger, went to the next page, looked for Avengers. There's no Avengers. No Avengers? I say to myself, what the hell? So I close the book, I look on the back, where they have everybody listed. There's no Avengers listed on the back. Again, in big bold letters, the most comprehensive guide to the Marvel Universe. Open it up, the front page. Here, if I want to read about the Avengers, or Archangel, or the All-Star Squadron, not All-Star Squadron, All-Winner Squad, or just about any of the important names that begin with A to B, or A to the beginning of B, I have to buy those stinking guides. They don't even have those. They didn't even take the ones that they put in those guides and put them in this guide. So in other words, this is not the most comprehensive book Marvel has put out, A to Z. This is just crap, and I'm so pissed because I have ordered the first 3 issues from DCBS. So I'm not ordering any more, and I just want to kick Joe Q in the nuts. That's all I want to do, because don't tell me you're going to give me the most comprehensive book and then give me crap. I mean, DC already screwed me over with JLA A to Z when they put the worst artists they could find drawing the JLA lineup. That was horrible, yet I bought all 3 because I had preview ordered them with my comic store, and I wasn't going to let them sit with an issue. But damn it, when you tell me you're going to give me the most comprehensive book, then give me the most comprehensive book. Even if you're going to reprint the crap that you've reprint the stuff that you put in those other books, reprint it. Give me that A to Z like you gave me back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, that you're reprinting in the Essentials. Have you forgotten how to do it? You're reprinting this in the Essentials, so you had a guideline on what to do, and you dropped the ball, Marvel. I'm sorry, you dropped the ball. I'm not going to get the whole thing. Again, I don't want to stick... Cameron's been good to us, and I could call him up, and I could email him, tell him to take him off my list. I know I'd pay a little bit of a restock price, but I'm not going to do that because, again, I don't want to stick somebody with books. But, damn it, I am so pissed, it's not even funny.
Well, and this is the 3rd time now that they've screwed us as far as something like this, because they had those really nice encyclopedia hardbacks, which you open them up and they're kind of crap.
Yeah.
And then
they weren't encyclopedias. They were just,
They were just... advertisements.
Exactly.
Especially the Hulk one. That was the
worst. Then you get the second time around with all these team ones, and DC does it with their Secret Files and Origins, okay, and they're kind of crap. So then this comes along, and I was just as excited as Jamie, even because I don't have any of the Marvel universes anymore. So I was looking for a new comprehensive thing, and that's why I got the hardbacks. That's why I picked up some of these other ones. And now the third time, once Jamie showed me this, and I was thinking about this, I got pissed. It's really stupid.
Yeah,
A to Z. How hard is that?
I didn't have any idea until you just said that, and it's just making me think. Who you put in there?
What's the point?
I mean, in the last 2 years, those books that come out every other month or whatever have covered damn near every team, every character,
and all the big things.
So what is it? All the third stringers in?
Yeah.
I mean, and they say, oh, if you want it, go get the Avengers issue. How?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back issue hunting? You want to sell this to me now? Put more in here and charge me $5 for the issue instead of $3. Load it up. It's stupid.
And I still wouldn't buy it, but at the very least, trade it. Trade those other things.
Well, that's what I thought for sure we'd see a trade of those.
Yeah,
you know.
But I still wouldn't buy it. I want A to Z.
I still think they should do what they did in the late 80s, early 90s with the binder pages.
Absolutely.
Just redo them, but with good art, because the art was complete crap on those. And then they can come out with them forever. As soon as you have as soon as you have 20 new characters, release 20 new binder pages and make those binders available consistently and charge me however much you want to charge me for the overpriced binders, but I'd buy them because I want them to all look the same.
That's right. That's right.
Bitches.
And Jamie made a point of showing me this yesterday. Before we started doing stuff, and I'm like, stupid Marvel.
Let's make our own freaking encyclopedia.
I'll take those 3 issues.
You got them, Pete. I will give them to you. They're
Peter
yours.
could make a better encyclopedia than what we're getting out of this stuff.
Well, you ain't kidding.
And I even bought like bags and boards for them too. So I'm out all
double whammy.
45 more cents. Damn it!
Double whammy.
So why don't you buy the team things and just rip out the page and stick them in the
tape them. Tape them.
I didn't want that. I want a whole thing. I want it.
Damn it!
I want a hardcover is what I want.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's like I said. In a perfect world, that is what I would like to see: the Encyclopedia of Marvel and the Encyclopedia of DC. Maybe an outside company doing it. Getting Marvel and DC both giving them the license to do it, and then each year, when the new characters come out, the new storylines come out, they put out a yearbook, and you put it at the end of the year. And
that's right.
And your set of encyclopedias, and.
That's right.
Just like the motherfucking Britannica.
That's right.
Encyclopedia Galacticus.
There must be a full moon or something, because I mean, I personally have gotten every single one of them, and I like them. The thing I would complain about them is I'm very disappointed in their selection of artwork. They're taking poses and things from the comics, most of them.
Strictly from the comics.
Yeah, and just recoloring them, but I sort of want, if I'm getting them, I want new artwork.
Mm-hmm.
That bothers me, but...
Dumbasses.
I'm actually defending.
Voice one.
Hey guys, this is Joe Pasco from Baltimore, Hero Boy on the forum. I was actually just calling you guys to say thank you for mentioning Versus System on the podcast on an episode a few days ago. I listened to it. I'm glad to hear you guys talking about that. I also just wanted to bring up a book that you guys haven't mentioned, but I was curious to hear your opinions on, which is Neil Gaiman's 1602 miniseries, which was out, I think, last year or 2 years ago or something. I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, and I really liked that. I thought it was a really neat take on the Marvel Universe, and actually somehow can be, fit into continuity, even though it really doesn't seem like it would be able to. So I'm not going to go into any details here. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I just was curious what you guys thought about it. I just listened to your Captain America episode today and got me thinking about that book, and that's why I was thinking of it, to have you guys hear your opinions on it. So I hope to hear your opinions on that book pretty soon. I'm sorry I keep repeating myself. I'm a little long-winded here, but I guess looking forward to the next episode, and thanks for the show. I love it. It's great, and we'll keep listening. Frickin' squeer. Bye.
All right, I'll talk about 1602 briefly.
You've read it?
Yeah, I read it too.
I started to read it. I didn't see the point of it. I wasn't going to get it at all. I wasn't going to even give it a chance, and I thought, no, Neil Gaiman, I got to try it. And I got first 2 or 3 issues, and I read through them, and I'm like, maybe I have to give it a chance and get to the end, but I didn't see a point enough to continue with getting the issues like that. Maybe if I got a trade, it would make more sense.
Did you read it, Jamie?
Yeah, I read each individual issue, and I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved every second of it. It was, and I think maybe if you were a little more steeped in the Marvel universe,
That could be.
you might, because I don't know, maybe if you weren't realizing who everybody was. I mean, Nick Fury was in it, and
I know the first
they
issue
had
I knew
Fantastic
that.
Four and Doom and
Peter
and
Parker
Daredevil and Black Widow and all these all these different characters in back in the time of Elizabeth I and all that. Well, I guess it was Elizabeth I. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Saying
I don't remember.
But still,
1602.
Back in 1602. And the one thing that got me though is the fact that Gaiman said this wasn't an Elseworlds title, as if that was like a bad word to say it was an Elseworlds title, which I don't think it was. It is a bad thing to say, and it really was more of an Elseworlds story, I thought, than anything else. It was more along the lines of this is what could have happened back in that time using these characters and so on and so forth.
I guess that was my thing with it because it was supposed to be in continuity. I didn't get it. I kept waiting for something to happen where it would make sense with what was happening today, and the issues I read didn't, so I stopped because I was getting pissed.
I guess, like, for me, I thought on the surface, I just thought it was a great story, and it was cool, and it was neat seeing the characters, but having slightly different names, and all that stuff. But then it made me think, it's like, I think for me, being a big fan of the Marvel Universe, it was kind of interesting to think that perhaps every 100 years or however long, like the cycle repeats itself. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, but on a really big scale. And it's like, so they're these characters, they become heroes and they grow, and then eventually they die, but then they're born again, and then they live again, but they're slightly different, but they're basically the same. And it's just that is kind of an interesting concept to be able to tell stories at any time period in history with the same characters. Could you imagine, the Marvel heroes in, ancient Rome or something? Like, it would just be interesting. And maybe it lends, it could produce this incredibly grand Marvel universe that hasn't really been, attempted in any of at least in the big two. Anyway, I don't know, maybe some small independent company's done something like that. But
it sort of sounds like Camelot 3000 in a way, kind of, a little bit. That's where they all come back in the future and they're all...
Yeah, a little bit. But
I'm not saying 1602. I mean his idea of the whole recurring thing.
Yeah, with the whole Arthurian, Galahad and
I read
Lancelot.
That was a long time ago.
And all those, yeah. In a way, I can see it, and I see what you say as far as an era of heroes there, and it's kind of along the same lines. I just thought it was more of an Elseworld story told well, and again, if you knew your history, your history of Marvel, the Marvel Universe, you could pick out who these people were and who they would become, and I just thought it was a great story, and I know they just finished, I guess, 1602, The New World, where they'll they're going to go and kind of explore, because one of the characters comes from the Virginia colony over to England, and I guess they're going to go back and either explore her story or... I guess she escaped at the end. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I read it. Pretty sure she escaped, so I guess she went back. And maybe they're going to follow her story after what happened in 1602. But it isn't written by Neil Gaiman. So it's, if you have Gaiman fans out there that are going to go, I'm going to get that. But if you liked it, it may be worth a try. I'm waiting for the trade. I'm going to pick up the trade when it comes out.
Well, I guess maybe it was just part of how they promoted it, saying it was not an out-of-continuity thing. And I'm 90% sure that's how they were promoting it.
Oh yeah, it definitely was. That was the whole thing he was saying. This wasn't an Elseworlds, and I just can't. I don't buy. I can see what Brian was saying, but I don't buy it. I just think it was more along the lines of, let's throw these characters, let's make it interesting into this world. How would you create somebody like the Fantastic Four in 1602, where they're not flying up in the air into a spaceship? What would Doctor Doom be like in 1602 without computers and flying robots and all that kind of stuff? And which I liked. I liked the take. I liked the challenge he gave himself to do that. But
And I didn't think I was a slouch as far as picking out who the people were. It just might have been my mentality block of how they were promoting it. This is what I'm trying to read, and I'm not getting it, so I skip it.
Yeah.
But now, sometime down the road, if I come across it and just have in my head that it's an Elseworlds and let it go at that, maybe I'd consider trying to go through it again.
All right, we got another voicemail.
Hey guys, this is Leonard Patton with in Norman, Oklahoma. Sorry I missed you on episode 86. It's a real bummer. It was cool to hear my name on the air, though. I have to definitely get my girlfriend to listen to it now. On the topic, you guys are talking about comic books in relation to novels, and I would highly recommend The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. Especially Brian, if you haven't had a chance to read this yet, I know you're doing a lot of kind of research and study and checking out comics from the Golden Age. I think you'll really enjoy this book. Highly recommended, and great job on the shows, guys. Keep doing sane during work. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, I've read it. Have no fear. It was a great book. And all you slouches who you all have it on your shelf or whatever, but you just haven't picked it up yet.
Oh no, I'm like 20 pages in now. I read that about 10 years in. That's 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm about 20 pages in.
I'm about the same way as Jamie.
But it's
the back cover's
it's
great.
a beautiful. It's just a.
Well, and when I first saw it come out, I picked it up. I mean, there was no. I picked up the soft cover when that came out, and then found the hardcover at a book warehouse and picked that up then.
Yeah, it's just beautifully written. A great story, and it's. I've told my dad, who's a great lover of books and everything. I said, look, I'm going to give you this book one day, and I'm going to say you just read it. I know you don't care about comic books. I know that you have no interest in reading comic books or anything. But while this book is centered around people who create comics, it's just the story of two guys coming of age in New York City in the 40s or 30s and 40s, and they just happen to be comic book creators, and it is fantastic, just fantastic. And Michael Chabon, he won the Pulitzer for it, and he deserved it because it's just great.
I picked up his book he did after that, Summerland, I think it was. And that's on my shelf to go through too.
I haven't read any of his other books. I saw that movie with Michael Douglas,
Wonder Boys.
Yeah, Wonder Boys, and that was pretty good. And he wrote that. That was based on his book or whatever. So.
I'm very curious. He wrote a short story using Sherlock Holmes. I'm very curious to read that one.
Yeah, and of course, get The Escapist then if you enjoyed Cavalier and Clay, because it's his anthology book. It's based on characters from the comic that they create. With the really cool thing that I and every comic book fan will love about Cavalier and Clay is there are a few chapters in the book where all this you're reading about the characters and blah blah blah, and then get to the next chapter, and all of a sudden you're like, what the hell's going on? And you realize you're reading the adventures that are happening in the comic book. So you read a chapter that's occurring in the comic that they were just writing, and then that chapter's over. And now you're back to the real world, and you're reading about the characters who, and then 10 chapters later, you read another chapter from the comic book, and it gives you real insight into the characters that they were creating and how they just really believed that this was cool and this was real, just like we do when we're talking about it. We almost believe it's real, and that's it's just one of the aspects that's really great about the book.
Cool.
How does that read compared to, like when I was reading that Geeks, Gangsters and the Gerard Jones one, I was like, I wonder if this is almost like the real world version of Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Yeah, I kept recalling Cavalier and Clay when reading the Gerard Jones book because the feel that it had. Gerard Jones put me in the 30s and 40s. He made me think that I was in that time period when I was reading that book. And it's the same thing with Cavalier and Clay. You're just completely immersed in that, and you don't doubt for a second what year it is in your head. And so it really reminded me. And there were extreme parallels because he basically, recreates Siegel and Schuster with these other guys, with Cavalier and Clay. That's so, it's just great. Well, I guess we should wrap it up here.
Yep. All right, this episode was sponsored by Crazy Comix, crazycomics.com, crazy with 2 E's. Check out their website. Check out, they have previews and trailers, character descriptions, designs, behind the scenes, interviews. They even got, when we interviewed them not too long ago, they got our logo up there and links to the website and to the actual episode. And they're going to have a podcast themselves coming out in winter 06, Catch the Craze podcast. So check it out.
Because they're crazy.
Hey, and anybody who has any or has read any top shelf books, get them entered in comicbookdb.com, because I didn't look, but I don't know how much of that stuff is in the database.
And stay tuned for tomorrow's big 100 episode.
Oh yeah!
Woohoo!
And if you
it wasn't that big.
if you want to leave us a voicemail, it's 206-888-4805. And if you want to send us an email, it's comicgeekspeak@gmail.com, and visit our website at comicgeekspeak.com. Thanks to upallnightgaming.com for hosting our website. And please, pretty please, vote for us at Podcast Alley. And we have some T-shirts on the website. We just recently have a new T-shirt that's available.
Thanks to Chris Staros of the Top Shelf for coming on.
Absolutely. And, I don't remember what else I was going to say here.
Sorry.
Oh. As usual, we're brought to you in conjunction with worldfamouscomics.com, your spot on the internet for the best comic book and entertainment-related columns, contests, features, reviews, news, resources, and more. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.